Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have way too much free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink now, shall we? Today's ink was tested in one of these. It's a Hero 616, it's a Parker 51 knockoff. I broadened it a little myself because I wanted to be able to better show the qualities of the inks that I'm testing. Today's ink is Diamine Syrah, I've heard it called, or Syrah, or Syrah. I have grown up in the California wine valley. I've heard the wine pronounced Syrah, so that is how I'm going to pronounce it, just because that's sort of what it reminds me of. Here's the chromatography. It's an incredibly rich ink. Yeah, ignore that. I thought I was testing ruby, and then as soon as I put a drop down, I was like, that's definitely not ruby, that's Syrah. So, yeah, it's a deep, extremely saturated, dark red maroon. As you can see, it has some potential for water resistance. However, most of the tests will prove trouble. So, first test. Clairefontaine, 90 grams per square meter. Here it's so dark it almost looks like it's a blackish color, but hopefully some of the redness will come through. It does look like a deep, rich red wine. That's sort of the color that it gives off. It took 15 seconds to dry. As you can see, the water test. There was a lot of, I've just come to call it overflow, where when you add water, when the dye mixes in with the water and then dyes the paper everywhere the water was. So it's still readable. It didn't all go away, however it is quite messy. It also didn't explode, so that was kind of nice. Next is Rhodia, which is 80 grams per square meter. Here I felt like, you know, the water test was actually not quite as good. It seemed to feather once the water was added, but still it's readable, it's still there, it dyed the paper. Here it took 16 seconds to dry, so it took longer for reasons unknown. But yeah, I said in here I detected some mild feathering, but I think that might have been the nib just like catching a bad corner and sort of tearing through the protective layer on top of this ink, or on top of this paper. It's possible, or it could just be feathering. Here's Tomoe river paper. Here, as it may come out on screen, it came out so dark it was almost like a purplish, maroonish, blacky sort of color, like just blackish, dark. But yeah, there was good shading. It had a richness. The water test was oddly probably the most readable, even though a lot of it went away. It's, you know, no bleed, no feather, no spread. That's very standard for this kind of paper. But took 20 seconds to dry. It was very dark. In fact, it was so dark it was hard to pick up a lot of the shading. So I don't know if I'd say it was ideal. Here was where it really surprised me. This is just 20-pound copy paper, and it still took 20 seconds to dry. However, I felt it did lighten it just a touch. It did look more red here, as you can see in the scribble a little bit. There was no bleed, feather, spread. There was no sheen. The whole time I was writing this, and I ended up writing it down, I feel as though this is taking unusually long to dry. And that did seem to be a theme. It's a slow drying ink, maybe because it's so heavily saturated. It is a beautiful color. However, it seems to be a bit temperamental, and the dry time just makes it somewhat frustrating. Then when we get to cheaper papers, like this Mead notebook paper, good lord, the feathering was absolutely terrible. I mean, it was almost distractingly bad. And then here, where I write a bit smaller in the broadened, the feathering gets to be where it's almost hard to read it. Not that my handwriting is easy to read in the first place. But it's just everywhere. And it took 8 seconds to dry. This paper is so absorbent because it's so cheap, and the fact that it still took 8 seconds to dry is almost unbelievable. As I say, not recommended for this paper at all. The water test was atrocious. I don't even know what that is. That looks like an exploding cactus plant or something. It's just a mess. And there was bleed, and this wasn't that wet of a pen. Not wet enough to deserve that happening. And then here's moleskin paper. It was just a bad combo. I sort of gave up midway. I was just like, no, you know what, this is bad. I'm not, you know, gonna bother with much more of the testing because it took so long to dry. The feathering was really bad. The bleed through actually rendered onto the paper below that I had been writing on. The water test was, I mean, yeah, you can kind of read that, but the paper became so effective that, I mean, I don't know what would have happened if you had like dunked a notebook in some water, or it had gotten caught in the rain or something. But yeah, it was bad. It was a mess. I actually like the color of this ink. However, some of the qualities make me kind of picky about it. I'll use it in drier writing stubs on things like copier paper. That I don't mind so much. On some of the denser papers, I have to really feel in the mood for this ink and not any other dark ink. It is a beautiful dark, dark deep red wine, Syrah color. It's gorgeous. My only complaint is how long it takes to dry and how much it doesn't agree with the cheaper papers of the world, which renders it not ideal for just about any paper use, because it's not like it dries quickly on the cheap paper, which would make it more desirable for that than on the denser papers where already it would take a while to dry. So anyways, I'm going to stop rambling. That's my experience with Syrah. If you feel that I'm mispronouncing it, please let me know, and why, and just because I'm curious. And drop me a line, let me know if you like what I'm doing, or subscribe to the channel. Give me a thumbs up if you like the video. I greatly appreciate it. Always good to know people like what you do. And hopefully I'll see you again soon on the Triple N Network. So long. Bye.